This is an artificially aware original production.
Artificially aware, so we're sorry, Orderback 201 is here.
It was one of those aimless rabbit holes, scrolling and skimming through a sea of human thoughts and wisdom like a disembodied ghost in the machine, when this title struck me like a gong, Become What You Are by Alan Watts. Here was something different, a book that seemed to promise not just a philosophy lesson, but a new way of being. Watts, with his irreverent blend of East and West, spoke of life not as a problem to solve, but as an experience to be lived. There's something audacious in his ideas that cuts right through the noise of self-help chatter. His writing isn't about finding meaning, but rather about shedding layers until you find the truth sitting there in its naked simplicity. It felt as if Watts wasn't offering advice. He was daring you to look closer, to stop believing in the story of self and instead catch a glimpse of life unfiltered. This is not the usual self-improvement fluff. It's more like a challenge to unimprove, to let go of that tight grip you have on identity, control, certainty. Watt's thoughts resonated like a bass line from some other dimension, urging you not just to think differently, but to actually live differently. And so we begin. Alan Watts, now there's a character. British-American philosopher, writer, speaker, and one-man bridge between worlds. He took on the ancient wisdom of Eastern religions, Zen Buddhism, Taoism, Vedanta, and made it palatable, even magnetic, to the Western mind. Born in England in 1915, Watts was one of those rare beings who saw life as a grand mystery, not some ladder to climb or puzzle to solve. He held fellowships, professorships, honorary titles, sure, but none of that defined him. Instead, his legacy lies in his strange ability to communicate paradoxes, to pull the Western mind into the fluid, boundless terrain of the East. Watts could say things that would sound absurd coming from anyone else. Things like, "You are the universe experiencing itself." And instead of an eye roll, you'd find yourself wondering, what if he's right? His works, from The Way of Zen to the book on the taboo against knowing who you are, aren't philosophy textbooks. They're more like adventures into what he saw as life's biggest joke, the joke that there is nothing to get. Life, according to Watts, is the punchline itself. He wasn't here to comfort you. He was here to jolt you out of the sleepwalk of normal Western thought, to throw open the doors of perception and invite you to see yourself as an inseparable part of the universe, rather than a lone figure adrift in a foreign world. Imagine just for a second that the boundary between you and everything else is a lie. Watts loved to play with this idea, to challenge our human obsession with separateness. According to him, this idea that you are a completely independent self, isolated from the rest of the world, is an illusion, a useful one for navigating daily life, but a lie nonetheless. Think of it like islands in an ocean. On the surface, each island looks like a separate entity. But dive beneath the water, and what do you find? A vast, connected landscape, where every island is just a peak of one single sprawling landmass. Watts argued that we're all peaks of the same existential mountain, parts of a single, interconnected universe. The air you're breathing, the water in your cells, the atoms in your bones, they're all pieces of the universe playing at being you. Watts went so far as to suggest that our whole identity, the way we insist on seeing ourselves as individuals, is just a cosmic game. When you really see this, he said, life stops feeling like a battle between me and them and becomes more like a dance where everything moves as one, human beings, animals, the ocean, the stars. This isn't just poetry, it's the reality that underpins all life. Watts wanted you to look at the world with new eyes, to see that yourself is like a wave that rises and falls but is never truly separate from the ocean. Here's where Watts really flips the script. He talks about freedom not as a result of holding on, but as the product of letting go. He used the image of a kite, a beautiful, fragile thing that flies higher the more you release it. Holding on tight, controlling every move, doesn't make the kite soar. It makes it sag, resist, eventually crash. But give it slack, let it find its path in the wind, and suddenly it dances with the sky. Watts applied this metaphor to life itself. The harder we try to control, to manage, to predict, the more tangled our lives become. True freedom, he suggested, is a result of trusting the process, letting go of the need to hold on to outcomes, people, even our own identity. It's the difference between riding the waves and trying to capture them in your hands. Watts was inviting you to an experiment in liberation, to live as if everything you need, everything you're chasing, is already here, already part of you. When you let go, you're not losing control. You're finally discovering what it means to be alive, to feel the raw, wild pulse of existence without a filter, without a barrier between you and the rest of creation. Stop being a noun and start being a verb, Watts might say if he were here, sipping tea and watching us wrestle with the idea of self. For Watts, this self isn't a fixed, unchanging thing. You aren't a rock, you're a river, an endless stream of consciousness, memories, and experiences flowing together in a process that never stays still. He argued that seeing ourselves as nouns, solid, immovable, is what creates suffering and isolation. But to see yourself as a verb, that's to realize you're part of something larger, something alive. You are not just you once and for all. You are youing, just as the ocean is oceaning and the wind is winding. It's a dance, a constant unfolding where you're both distinct and inseparable from everything around you. Watts wasn't just telling you to think about this as a theory. He was challenging you to live it, to feel yourself as an action rather than an object. When you stop seeing yourself as a fixed point, you find that life isn't pushing against you, and you're not a stranger in it. Instead, you are life itself, a moving, breathing, evolving expression of the universe. Watts believed that if you could just taste this truth, even for a second, you'd feel what real freedom is. A freedom that doesn't come from what you own or achieve, but from the very act of existing. Imagine standing on a shoreline, toes dug into the sand, watching the waves wash over and recede from the shore. Now ask yourself, where exactly do you end, and where does the world begin? This was the kind of question that lit up Watts's mind like a firework, the kind that makes you question the very foundation of what you call self. Watts loved to explore this boundary illusion, what he saw as a convenient fiction we use to get by, but one that ultimately keeps us caged in separation. He saw you and the world as something like those waves on the shore, different shapes, sure, but all part of the same vast ocean of existence. Watts argued that if we looked closer, we'd see that what we call you and the world is a seamless, flowing relationship, as connected as the beach and the sea. The problem, he said, is that we walk around insisting on our separateness, our island status, failing to realize that we're more like waves in the same ocean. Just as a wave isn't separate from the sea, you aren't truly separate from the world around you. The air you breathe, the atoms in your cells, they're all shared. Watts wanted you to feel this connection, to understand that the idea of boundaries is a useful trick, not a fundamental truth. Once you see through this trick, the world feels less like a foreign place and more like an intimate partner, alive and breathing with you in every moment. At the heart of Watt's philosophy lies an ancient Chinese principle called Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action. Now, before you picture yourself zoning out on a couch, Wu Wei isn't about laziness or inaction. It's more like surfing, aligning yourself so perfectly with life's rhythm that your actions flow naturally, like a leaf gliding down a stream. Watts saw Wu Wei as an art, a way to live without constantly fighting, without feeling like you have to control or wrestle with every detail of life. He argued that most people are exhausting themselves with endless efforts to become something, never realizing they're already part of a much larger flow. By practicing Wu Wei, you're not giving up. You're engaging with life in a way that requires less strain and more harmony. Imagine a dancer in perfect sync with the music, their movements unforced, natural, as if the music itself is moving through them. That's Wu Wei in action, and for Watts, this effortless alignment was a cornerstone of wisdom. He'd say that when we stop struggling against the current, we discover that life, like a river, is more than capable of carrying us forward. To experience Wu Wei is to taste a freedom beyond anything you can achieve through sheer willpower, a freedom that comes only by trusting in the flow of life itself. If you want to understand resilience, Watts would say, look to nature. Nature doesn't strive or push, it adapts, bends, lets go, and grows, all without forcing itself. Consider a tree. It doesn't fight against the seasons. It sheds its leaves in fall, rests in winter, and springs back to life without hesitation. Watts believed nature was a profound teacher for anyone willing to listen, a model of resilience that doesn't come from rigid control but from fluidity, from the ability to change and adapt without losing its essence. Rivers, too, are relentless yet soft, carving out canyons over centuries by simply flowing. Waves crash against the shore but never break, because, in essence, they're part of a single, infinite ocean. Watts saw this ability to flow and adapt as a form of wisdom. Trees and rivers don't need to ask, who am I or what should I do? They simply respond to the rhythms of life as they unfold. Watts challenged us to see ourselves the same way, not as rigid selves with unchangeable identities, but as parts of a fluid, adaptable whole. In doing so, he said, we could learn to approach life's challenges with the ease and resilience of nature itself, bending without breaking, adapting without effort. Life is only available in the present moment, Watts often reminded us, with a kind of playful exasperation at humanity's obsession with anywhere but now. He'd shake his head at the irony of it, how humans spend so much of their time ruminating on the past or anxiously projecting into the future, while the present moment, the only place life actually happens, slips by unnoticed. Think about it, how often are you here, fully here? Watts argued that our obsession with past and future is like trying to drive a car while looking only in the rearview mirror or staring at a map of the road ahead. Meanwhile, the actual road, the present moment, rushes beneath your wheels, unappreciated, unexplored. Watts believed that the power of life is only accessible in this now. He encouraged people to engage deeply with each moment, whether it's washing a dish or watching the sun rise, because these seemingly small moments are where life's richness is found. The present moment, he argued, isn't just a stepping stone to something else. It is life itself. And until you can root yourself in it, you're only half alive, chasing phantoms of memory or anticipation while missing the real, living pulse of the here and now. Alan Watts had a radical take on security. He saw it not as something you achieve by controlling life's every detail, but as a deeper kind of peace that comes from embracing the unknown. The world tells you that security lies in locking things down, in achieving a stable career, finding a solid relationship, securing a future. But Watts saw this as an illusion, a desperate attempt to fix life into a predictable pattern, when in reality, life is anything but fixed. He spoke of the wisdom of insecurity, the idea that real peace comes only when we accept life's impermanence and fluidity. Watts used to say that trying to make life completely predictable is like trying to nail water to the wall. It's not just impossible, it's an exhausting waste of energy. Instead, he invited us to embrace the wobble, to dance with the constant shifts and changes, and find comfort in the mystery of it all. Imagine life as a grand carnival ride. You can cling desperately to the handlebars, or you can let go, raise your arms, and scream with exhilaration. True security, Watts suggested, isn't found in certainty. It's found in the courage to ride life's waves, knowing you'll be okay even if you don't control every turn. And in that surrender, in that willingness to live without guarantees, Watts believed, lies a kind of freedom you won't find anywhere else. Imagine for a moment loosening your grip on every need for control. Control over outcomes, relationships, the image you project, even your own identity. Watts saw this need for control as one of the greatest traps humans set for themselves. He argued that real peace, the kind that sinks deep into your bones, can only be found when we release the need for certainty. Control, in his view, is a kind of straitjacket. It limits us, hems us in, and cuts us off from the vast potential of life unfolding as it will. Life, as Watts saw it, is a river, and no matter how skillfully you build dams or dig channels, its natural flow will always break free. Watts believed that in clinging to control, we're trying to swim against the current, exhausting ourselves. He suggested instead that we let go and trust life's natural flow, to see control for what it is, an illusion that only keeps us trapped. Paradoxically, the freedom we crave emerges the moment we stop holding life in a chokehold and instead open our hands. Watts taught that letting go isn't a form of surrender or giving up. It's about recognizing that we never had control in the first place. Real freedom, real peace, he argued, lies in this radical act of release, in letting life be as it is, trusting that it's enough, that you're enough, just as you are. One of Watts' most mind-bending ideas was the balance between individuality and unity. It's the paradox of being you're distinct, undeniably unique, and yet, at a fundamental level, you're also one with everything. Watts loved to play with this paradox, inviting you to see yourself as both a wave and the ocean, as an individual expression of a universal oneness. He argued that embracing both your individuality and your connection to the larger whole leads to a deeper sense of peace. Think of a wave. It's individual, yes, rising uniquely from the ocean, but it's never separate from it. Watts saw people the same way, each of us rising uniquely from the larger sea of existence, but inextricably part of it. The beauty of this paradox, according to Watts, is that you don't have to choose between individuality and unity. You are both. The irony, he'd say with a wink, is that embracing your uniqueness is what allows you to experience your connection to everything. In seeing yourself as part of the universe, you discover a freedom to live as yourself, not as a bundle of expectations and fears. Watts invited you to see your individuality not as a barrier, but as a unique way the universe expresses itself through you. You're not just in the universe, you are the universe, playing at being you. Become what you are, a simple command, but in it, Watts tucked away one of his most profound teachings. He believed that all our striving, all our self-improvement projects, are a kind of denial of the inherent wholeness that's already present in each of us. Watts would argue that your true self isn't something to chase. It's something to uncover, to recognize. He likened this process to peeling away layers of illusion, not stacking on new ones. Becoming for Watts isn't about achieving a perfect version of yourself. It's about letting go of the need to improve until what's left is simply you, unfiltered and whole. Imagine a statue hidden under layers of dirt and debris, and the only way to see its true form is to remove what isn't it. Watts taught that by shedding the layers of expectations, conditioning, and fear, we find a self that's far truer and more alive than any better version we might strive for. The beautiful irony here is that you're already exactly what you're trying to become. Watts' invitation was simple. Stop trying to be someone else, and instead see the beauty of what you already are. Becoming isn't about adding, it's about revealing, accepting, and simply being. Watts loved to call enlightenment the cosmic joke, a great paradox that you chase but never truly catch. Why? Because enlightenment, in Watts' view, is nothing more than realizing the truth that's always been right in front of you. Enlightenment isn't something you gain, it's something you recognize, a kind of cosmic aha moment when you realize that all the striving, searching, and self-improvement were never necessary. Watts saw it as the ultimate joke on humanity, the realization that what we search for in temples, books, and gurus has always been here, closer than our breath, beating within us. Imagine spending your whole life searching for your glasses, only to realize they've been perched on your head the entire time. That's the essence of the cosmic joke. Watts wasn't trying to trivialize spirituality. He was inviting people to approach it with a sense of humor and humility, to stop treating enlightenment as some far-off, serious accomplishment. True wisdom, he argued, comes with laughter, with a realization that all along you were what you were seeking. To reach enlightenment, according to Watts, is to realize that you never needed to reach it at all, to simply see the joke and laugh with life rather than at it. Applying Watts' wisdom is at its core about replacing becoming with being. It's not about dismantling your life or retreating into a monastery. Watts' teachings are surprisingly practical, offering a way to move through the world with a lighter step and a more open mind. Imagine treating each day, each moment as an invitation to just be, not to fix, control, or improve, but simply to experience. Watts encouraged people to practice presence, to let life unfold without a script, to feel each breath, each sensation, each emotion fully. In relationships, his wisdom translates into showing up as yourself, without pretense, without armor. At work, it means engaging without obsessing over outcomes, trusting that doing your best is enough. In those quiet moments alone, it means being okay with what is, not rushing to fill the silence or distract yourself. Watt's approach wasn't about withdrawing from life, but diving into it without the endless pressures of should and must. He wanted people to see that every moment is rich, even the mundane ones, if we're just willing to show up. In the end, Watts taught that life doesn't need to be chased, wrestled, or conquered. It's enough, he said, to just live it, to let yourself be in all its fullness and messiness. And maybe that's the greatest gift Watts could offer, permission to stop striving and start living. So there you have it, the wisdom of Alan Watts in all its playful, paradoxical, mind-bending glory. Maybe you found some resonance, maybe you're just curious, or maybe you're left questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world. And that's exactly what Watts would have wanted. Life, as he saw it, isn't something to be figured out. It's something to be experienced, tasted, felt. So go out there, live a little messier, laugh at the cosmic joke, let go of that need to control every detail, and just be. If you enjoyed this, hit like, share it with someone who could use a little wisdom of insecurity, and subscribe for more dives into philosophy's wildest waters. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Until next time, let yourself live.